Okay, so here's the Creality Scan app for the Android and the holder and modular mount system that I created and am now selling for the Otter. This particular print's in PETG Petchy and is a clear color, which I think is pretty cool. But we'll scan this little toy car that my kids are playing with. I am in the small setting, high quality. And you can see that it picks up quite well. So you can move pretty fast, but I found it's usually producing better quality if you don't go too fast. And of course, tracking is better. So both the phone and the scanner are being powered by the power bank that I have on the bottom. And then the cell phone is capturing the data from the Otter. The cell phone is a Galaxy S22 Plus. All right, well, the model has turned green in most of the areas that are important for me. So that indicates a good quality scan as a whole. If there's any areas that were still red on the exterior, then I could go back and scan them over again. But this looks fine for what I'm doing. So it's just going through and optimizing the point cloud with some automated settings that it has. And it's worth noting that the settings that it chooses in the app, they work okay, but if you bring it into the computer, it can be better. All right, so here's the point cloud. You can see it looks pretty good. So we'll just go through and run the mesh again, and its default settings. And it's nice because the toy car here is actually fairly reflective, and the windows and whatnot are black, and this scanner seems to do a pretty good job on that. Okay, so here's the meshed model. And for my needs, that's capturing plenty of detail. I think it looks pretty good. Go through and do their color mapping. To be honest, I find that their visible camera isn't the best. It produces acceptable results, especially for what it's meant to do, and can help when you're going through and editing some of the files to make sure you're manipulating the mesh in the correct area. So it's definitely valuable and nice to have the visible camera, but it's not the highest quality. Okay, so here is the meshed and color mount 3D model. So again, I think it looks pretty good. In the visible areas, there's definitely some opportunities to improve, but for what I'm doing, it works great. So now I'm removing it from the portable solution that I have with the handheld handle and battery bank. And I'm going to hook it up to the computer now, the desktop. And we'll wind up running a test doing the same scan in the same way. And as you can see, the grip here is actually molded to my hand, and I personally find it to be quite comfortable and much easier to manage than holding the Otter by itself. So I really like using that, and then I've got a couple of accessories that I designed. This one is the angled holder, so it just makes it easier to use the turntable. And as I went past kind of quickly, there on the right is actually our website, creativecars.com. You can visit the shop there. We're actually selling this modular mount system for the Otter that I designed. So here it is hooked up to the computer, and I press the play button from the Otter itself. And I had to move it around just a little bit to make sure that I was capturing the front of the car completely here. But it is nice in the software. The gauge on the left side that shows you whether you need to move closer or not. And of course, on the point cloud here, I'm just looking to make sure that the model turns green in as many places as is reasonable. If it's green, that means that's good. If it's red, it means it's not that good yet. You can see the desktop scans pretty fast. The frame rates are pretty good. It's definitely better than recording from the phone, but honestly, the phone captures quite well. I haven't calculated out the frames per second on the phone, but it seems to be at least 10 frames per second. So I'm just going through here and changing the resolution for the point cloud optimization. I like to set the resolution on the small side and on the sensitivity on the high side just to give the most amount of detail to the model. It definitely takes much longer to go through with this setting, but it produces better results. Then one of the things that I'll show in a few minutes is we'll bring the scan in from the cell phone and compare the quality of the model with the default settings from the phone versus the resolution settings that I'm changing here on this model. And you'll be able to see that the default settings, they work okay, right? But there definitely are improvements that can be had if you manually modify some of the settings. Okay, so here's the optimized mesh. There's some artifacts off to the side that I could pretty easily remove, but for this demonstration is not overly important. So I'm just putting the mesh in auto here. That usually seems to work all right and will allow for a more fair comparison to what the phone is doing. Okay, so here is the meshed version. Again, you can see that the details are pretty good. So we're going to do a color map now so that you can see what it's like in the visible spectrum. Okay, and there we go. A optimized model, so to speak, at least with its default settings. You can always make it better, and you could go in and you could clean it up further. So one of the things that I really like about Creality's, I'll say workflow, is how easy it is to import stuff from your phone over to the computer. You can see it reads the QR code really fast and starts transferring. And it's true that these are not the largest files, but it transfers pretty fast. And I find it much easier to get higher quality results from the models that I scan with my phone if I do bring them into the computer. But the convenience of not having to be tethered to the computer is really nice. So I enjoy the fact that I can be mobile and scan with my phone. If I want to do something of, I'll say, extra high quality, then of course I can always bring it inside and scan on the computer because it is faster. But the phone, it's hard to beat for its convenience. So this is just comparing the phone scan versus the computer scan. So this is the computer scan. And this is the scan from the phone. You can see they're fairly similar from the visible spectrum. When you end up looking at the mesh, though, you can see some differences here. So there's a desktop scan that had the resolution settings changed, so you can see it's a little bit sharper. There's a little bit more noise, but there's some more detail as well. But what I can do is I can go back through and re-optimize the point cloud from the data collected with my phone using the same settings that I did with a desktop. And what you'll see is that the results wind up being extremely similar between the two. And realistically, they should be. I mean, it's the same camera. It's just two different methods of capturing the data. And one of the things that you'll be able to look at once this model is done being meshed is the amount of faces between the two. And what you'll notice is right now the amount of faces shown is relatively low. It's about a little less than half of what the desktop scanned model had. But once this is done with its optimization and mesh, you'll notice that it basically doubles and becomes very similar to the amount of faces for when I was scanning on the desktop. Okay, so we've got a lot more points here, and we'll run through the mesh. And again, that's when the models will become much more similar. Okay, so here's the completed mesh from the phone, now with the optimized resolution, and there's the desktop. You can see now they look much more similar. Just going back and forth. So I'll just run a color map through this also, and then we'll compare how that color map now processes and looks from the phone scan to the desktop scan. Okay, so here is the 3D model that is colored mapped from the phone, and it looks pretty good. Same with the desktop version. There are small differences here in lighting, and it's possible that I had the scanner in a slightly different location affecting the lights that I have in here. But, I mean, pretty similar between the two. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment.